Hello to everyone. We'll start our next panel. My name is Ion Ioniță. I'm the moderator. I have the honor to moderate this very challenging panel, Truth and Reconciliation Processes. And let me introduce our distinguished guests and panelists, Taina Marek Piecki. She is the director of Sami Museum Sida Inari, and as I know, and I'm telling you a secret, she was a former mayor in the northernmost municipality in Europe. So in the Arctic region of Finland and Arctic region of Europe, and it will be very interesting to share with us this extraordinary experience. Thank you for being here. I'm glad to present you the next panelist, Marek Mutor. He is president of the Platform of European Memory and Conscience, historian. Welcome. Thank you for being here with us. Katalin Miklosi, he's a professor, docent of political history at the Finland University, Helsinki University, excuse me, head of Eastern European Studies. Thank you for being with us. Aaron Mate, historian, vice chair, Committee of National Remembrance, Hungary. Thank you very much for your presence here and for your future presentation and dialogue. Speaking about truth and reconciliation, all of us, we know the famous quote saying, those who don't remember history are condemned to repeat history mistakes. And I think this is truth. And history mistakes means crime, genocide, discrimination. And if we don't know the truth about history, we will repeat all these horrors of history. But it's not easy to know the truth and to do reconciliation. Because our society, post-Cold War society, post-communist society, I think they are also post-traumatic society. Communism dictatorship was traumatic for our societies. It was crime, it was genocide, it was wiping out entire generations. And as psychiatrists know and the psychologists know, trauma transcends generation. And now we have a very traumatic societies, and we need to heal our societies. In this regard, we have built in time a lot of institutions, committees, and all kind of institute for remembrance and for memory, as our European Network Institute is. And you represent here this kind of institution. And I think there are two ways, two paths. The hard way is truth and reconciliation. The easy way is spreading hatred, fake history, disinformation and manipulation in our societies. And this is what is happening now on social media. We have a circulation of fake history, rewrite history, and also with important effects on our society. probably the social media and social networking represents also a huge tool in communication, but also the most dangerous weapon of mass disruptions in our society. And we have to cope with this. This is a world we are living in, the world of post-truth. And if we are here to celebrate the Helsinki spirit, I have to mention act of courage and coming to terms with the past, reckoning with the past. Extremely courageous people who did this before Helsinki. And I can mention the letter of Polish bishop to the German bishops in 1965, and the famous sentence, "We forgive and ask for forgiveness." And the second one I can remember is 5 years later, in 1970, the famous Warsaw knee fall of Chancellor Willy Brandt in Warsaw, in the front of the Warsaw Ghetto Memorial, asking for forgiveness for what Nazi Germany did in the Second World War. Extremely courageous leaders assuming this act of courage in times of dictatorship. And in this regard, in our days, can we assume new act of reconciliation and courage in the spirit of Helsinki? Can we have chances in this post-truth world? Can truth have a chance in this world? I'm keen to see the views of our panelists, and I will invite Taina Mari Pisieski to speak, to have her presentation about a different situation, about the situation of Sami people in Finland, because also we have here problem with the past. Please, you have the floor.
Thank you very much, Ian. Yes, hello everybody. It's a real pleasure to take part of this conference and to share the story of Sami Museum Siida. I will next talk shortly about our work and what the return of our ancestors' objects means to us and how we collaborate with the Sami community. Our museum's work is connected to Sami rights and reconciliation efforts with the Finnish state. Our museum have close cooperation with the Truth and Reconciliation Commission in Finland, and you probably know that Sami Truth Commission is still working in Sweden, and the Commission in Norway delivered its final report in 2023. All three commissions represent important steps forward recognition, justice, and healing for the Sami people. Siida is the only Sami museum in Finland, and we have nationally mandated responsibilities related to Sami culture. As you know, Sami people are the only indigenous people in Europe. We live in Sapmi, a region that spans across northern parts of Finland, Norway, Sweden, and the Kola Peninsula in Russia. The Sami Museum Siida tells the story of the Sami, past, present, and future, Our role is to promote and preserve Sami cultural heritage and foster the cultural identity and pride of the Sami people. We want to be part of creating the cultural heritage of the future. Sida is an indigenous people's museum, primarily for Sami people themselves. However, we are very happy that our story resonates with other visitors and the museum community around the world. We broke our visitor record for the third year in a row. Last year, we welcomed 82,000 exhibition visitors. Half of our visitors come from abroad, last year from 110 countries, all around the world. And it should be mentioned that only 700 people are living in the village of Inari. So we are really honored by the awards we have received in recent years, and these recognitions have been granted not only for Sida's exhibitions, but also for our social impact and our community work with our people. That is why the credit for our success belongs to the entire Sami community. And I have to say that these awards have strengthened our confidence and the vision. This has happened not only within our museum, but also more broadly within the Sami community. And I have to say that I'm very proud that we have shown that an indigenous museum can be named European Museum of the Year. And it was the first time when a museum located in Finland received this award. And the award has been present almost for 50 years. But still, the most important innovation and source of pride for us is our new main exhibition. These lands are our children. The whole exhibition is built on the Sami way of thinking, how our ancestors live and breathe in us. The understanding of the cultural environment of the Sami is important because nature and culture are closely interconnected. Our exhibition is a story of the story of the Sami by the Sami. And actually, this was the first time when we wrote our own story. 2022. We, Sami people, decided what to tell and how to tell. We wanted to involve the Sami community extensively in the preparation of the exhibition. Over 300 members of the Sami community participated in the preparation of the exhibition. Sami people of different ages were able to tell us what and how we should tell about our culture. And the experience was very empowering, and we received a lot of praise for the communal way of working. I believe that this was the only right way for us as an indigenous museum to work together with our community. And for the first time, the traditional knowledge of the Sami people, we call it ärpetiehtu, and Western science have been presented as equal source of information in our exhibition. So, what's next? We have decolonized our exhibition, and now it is time to decolonize our collection practices through repatriation, community work, and by doing it the Sami way. We are pleased to launch a significant project funded by the Finnish Cultural Foundation, aiming to promote the return of Sami objects from European museums. This 3-year research and development project will be carried out in collaboration with the Sami community. And when we talk about repatriation today, it's important to understand which historical continuity this issue belongs to. The scientific colonialism of the North, which the Sami have faced, has a long history. Sami cultural heritage has been collected in European museum collections since the 17th century. The plundering of Sami graves continued into the 20th century for research purposes. And still estimated 50,000 Sami artifacts are still in non-Sami museums around Europe. And today, I have to say that I feel very happy because Europe is changing. And the big national museums are activated to the repatriation of all indigenous artifacts. Sida has actively and successfully promoted domestic repatriations for over 20 years now, and international repatriation processes are now underway. The Finnish National Museum repatriated the Sami collection to Sami Museum Sida, included 2,200 objects year 2021. And it has been the largest repatriation until now, the whole Sami collection from the Finnish National Museum. And last year, we received 400 Sami objects from the Museum of Ostrobotnia in Oulu. When we talk about repatriation, I always want to emphasize that indigenous peoples have the right to manage their own cultural heritage, like every nation, like every people. We have the right for that. And today, the discussion often also concerns the ownership of cultural heritage and how it is represented. Is it the indigenous people themselves who represent it, or is it others? I'm often asked what it feels like to see and touch, for the first time, the old Sami objects made and used by our ancestors, objects that have finally returned home. We are talking about Sami tuotji, Sami handcraft. And there is no short answer to that question. But I want to show you a trailer of the film called Marjan. Probably some of you have seen this beautiful film, Marjan Homecoming. This is the film by Suvi West and Anssi Kömi from Finnish side of Sápmi. Marjan Homecoming is a story about a historic repatriation when the National Museum of Finland returned thousands of Sami objects to Sida. It is a film about joy and celebration as the cultural heritage of our ancestors finally come home.
Aistitko sä mitään semmoista energiaa tai henkeä näissä?
Joo, nyt mulla tulee, kun sä oot läsnä.
Mattu. Tävvira kudde faarustismin oktasas iilui ja morrasi. Miitähpä huvä koda mähtse.
Ainan ahte tähla namalassi alkuvakkär kiennus, man kietsis puerta Sami Nanne-Juhon saajana. Tah nisukea noivista lea son vätsä tekota kuuvtsa faamu lea sufaarus. Son lea tekot täs puopmakko tonna, että täs lea vähän erenomasta outu.
muodžannosta mattuideta, mutta ei tällä min olles ala muodžannossa min mattu.
Musta vaikka huistuoraan vuorottamussa hahte taht läädiuoka minuppastuhta muellima.
Tiitu alvupehte muu tjeengalot ja seunja sohtsaat siitä.
Täällä latja, kos lähtee tolos saami hoiveskotsuut.
Miltä susta tuntuu nähdä nämä vastauksilta?
Mutta mä en tiedä vielä sitä kysymystä.
Thank you very much. I'm really looking forward to our discussion. Thank you.
Thank you for your presentation and very impressive film. You presented us, and congratulations for the award, the European Museum of the Year. We are going forward, and I will invite Katalin for your presentation. The last? We want the last? Marek, if you want. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you for the invitation, and I'm very glad that I can join to the conference of European Network Remembrance and Solidarity here in Helsinki and share a little bit my thoughts about reconciliation and truth and reconciliation process. And I would like to share with you the example, which is, I think, very inspiring. I will be talking about the international reconciliation. So, of course, we need reconciliation in many different dimensions. Inside our societies, maybe the most important for now. But I will be talking about international reconciliation process and dialogue. And this example is Polish-German reconciliation after the Second World War. I think that this experience of this process is so important because it gives us a hope that even in the very bad circumstances, unsolved and intractable conflicts, there is a hope that these conflicts can be solved on the path of dialogue and reconciliation, not a war, for example. But of course, it started with the war, with the Second World War. So to understand the complexity of the process, you have to know, you know probably, that Poland during the war was occupied by Nazi German state. Germans killed more or less 6 million of Polish citizens, half of them were Jews, destroyed our cities, and so on. The war for Poland, the end of the war was not a freedom, but this second totalitarian regime. So Poland started to be dependent on USSR with the new communist government in Warsaw and all circumstances of totalitarian communist regime. So we theoretically won the war, but in fact we still stayed in the totalitarian state. Very important in this context was that Poland changed borders. Poland lost former eastern territories and got what we call western territories, which were, before the Second World War, important part of the German state. In effect, millions of people were transferred from east to west, and a lot of millions of Germans were exiled from their homes, as well as a lot of Poles from the former eastern territories, and all this melting pot of travels, exiles, and so on. Important fact, there was no peace treaty after the Second World War. So Potsdam Agreement was not a peace treaty. So the new border on the Odra and Nysa River was not a let's say, international recognition of this border. So lack of international treaty, instability of the border, it was, let's say, important argument for the Soviets to send a lot of troops to our western border to defend us against Germans who can come back. Of course, our direct neighbor was the Eastern Germany, communist one, but fear is fear. So in this intractable conflict, a lot of people thought that there will be no more agreement between Poles and Germans. There's even a proverb or a famous sentence in Polish language, but it's very difficult to translate. But the sense is that through the thousands of years and in the future, we will be enemies. Yes, so this is the kind of understanding of our history in 40s, 50s, and early 60s. I think it was on both sides of the border. And we have to remember that even in early 60s, in Western Germany, so democratic state, almost 80% of citizens were against of recognition of the new border. So it was really not stable and not the last one. Very important step of the reconciliation process was the mentioned here letter of Polish bishops to their German brothers. It was during the Second Vatican Council, 1965. And of course, there were a lot of more actors of the process. German Evangelical Church, German Catholic societies, a little bit later. Of course, later, Willy Brandt. But I would focus on this letter. His author, Bolesław Kominek, was bishop in Wrocław, in my city, but all bishops present in Rome decided to send this letter to German brothers. So formally it was the invitation for the ceremony of the 1000th year of baptized in Poland, but letter contains this very famous sentence, "We forgive you and ask for forgiveness." So it was very big moral impact of the both sides of the border. In Poland, it was very difficult to accept it because we forgive you, okay, we are Christians, we can forgive, but ask for forgiveness for what? For what? It was very difficult to understand, to have this kind of compassion to the counterpartner that, of course, Germans were exiled, for example, from their homes. And of course, it was a fruit of the war, which were started by Germans. But of course, there is something to think in this field. On the German side, this letter was very discussive. For example, Bolesław Kominek was interviewed in the prime time of ARD, of German television. It was very, very discussive in mass media. And this kind of shock, I think, was very important to change a little bit opinions. In the middle of 60s, of course, this decade is very important because the new generation was started to be adults. So we have generation which people who did not remember the war. We had famous trials of former, for example, guards from the concentration camps. A lot of factors which affected on public opinion in Germany. So in the end of the 60s, these proportions in West Germany, which are shown in polls, changed, and even 75% of respondents agreed for the new border. This opened, among others, the way for Willy Brandt to implement the new Eastern policy, because he had a kind of understanding in the society. Coming back to the letter, I focused on the moral side of the letter, this Christian moral side, but it was not enough. it was not enough. So it would be, I think, a little bit naive to think that the very important and Christian sentence can change as the only thing the attitude of societies. Behind the letter of Polish bishops, which is a quite long document with all, let's say, revision, a new vision of the history of relations between Poles and Germans, there was also a kind of, I think, so I can defend this theory, that it was also a kind of political offer made by Catholic Church. But that time, in Poland, Catholic Church, with a very high moral authority, was a kind of representative of the nation, real one. So they could do a political offer. What was the offer? Of course, in the letter, it was impossible during communist time to write it frankly. But this kind of offer, we can read it, we can predict it, was that you have to recognize the border as a fruit of the war, bitter fruit of the war, in the name of the peace in the Europe, and as a condition for the future reunion of the Germany. And in fact, it happened after 1990 and Treaty 4+2. So this was the idea behind, political idea behind the letter. Of course, both factors, moral impact and political vision, were important. Yes, researching the Polish-German reconciliation process is a very, let's say, deep topic, and I'm sure that I'm making shortcuts, but very often I was wondering if the reconciliation process because it was a success. Yes, we now, even if we have some problems in our relations, we discuss it. Yes, so this is the difference is huge. Yes, from the war and killing people to the, let's say, normal politics. So I was wondering many times if there is a kind of pattern of reconciliation between nations. We even organized some seminars for young leaders from many different countries to discuss other examples, to discuss contemporary conflicts, and to find the answer. And the answer is not as simple. For sure, we have to have some conditions for reconciliation. The conflict has to be stopped. The evil has to be named. There have to be counter partners, actors who are able to act, and so on and so on. But for sure, there is no a simple pattern for reconciliation. But the experience of Polish-German reconciliation gives us the very important thing, which is a hope that reconciliation is possible. In 1965, nobody in Poland, and probably in Germany as well, would say that we will be, let's say, in friendship or regular, normal cooperation. And it turned out that it is possible. So I think that the most important experience from this process is that this is possible, that makes us this kind of courage to try in other circumstances. For sure, I know that studies on the Polish-German reconciliation process were used or were helpful somehow and still are inspiring for people who are, for example, dealing on Polish-Ukrainian hot and difficult topics, as well as in some other examples. So I think that it should be popularized and better known. I have this feeling that because I'm a researcher on this topic that I couldn't present you all complicacy and complex of this, but I think that you can learn a lot from the many different publications on these topics, and maybe it is worth to say that now we have 60th anniversary of the reconciliation letter. This letter was the original letter is in Köln in Germany, because in Köln in Germany. And we are hoping that maybe next year it will be submitted to the UNESCO Memory of the World list. So I hope so. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Indeed, it's a lesson, this process of reconciliation between German and Polish people and states after World War. It was unthinkable in the 50s or 60s, and this proves reconciliation is a difficult way, but it needs leadership. Without leadership, it is impossible to achieve it. And I am pleased to invite Aaron Mate. You have the floor, please.
So, dear ladies and gentlemen, thank you for having me as a part of this panel discussion. And my thanks also goes for the European Network of Remembrance and Solidarity for organizing this huge conference and symposium. But first of all, I would like to pay homage to the Helsinki conference in 1975. And for this act, I would like to read out one paragraph, the very first after the introduction from the closing accord, I mean the Helsinki Final Act. So the quote goes like this: "The participating states will respect each other's sovereign equality and individuality, as well as all the rights inherent in and encompassed by sovereignty, including in particular the right of every state to judicial equality, to territorial integrity, and to freedom and political independence. They will also respect each other's right freely to choose and develop its political, social, economic, and cultural systems, as well as its right to determine its laws and regulations." Quote ends. First of all, this text reaffirms the Westphalian system, which I think was very European. It was invented in Europe, it was applied in Europe and from Europe, and it remains a core of our diplomatic system of the world still today. But we also know, if we look back, I mean historically, that following the years of the Helsinki Closing Accord, so at the end of the 70s and in the 80s, we know that the Soviet Union financed communist parties and terrorist groups in the West. So it was nothing like accepting sovereignty. And on the other side, the West supported opposition behind the Iron Curtain. But still, I would risk that accepting nominal or the nominal acceptance of each other's sovereignty is very important in peacetime. The next issue, I'm starting from very far, and you will understand how I will get to the point of truth and reconciliation. The next issue I would like to mention is the issue of national minorities. You may know that almost 2 million Hungarians are living outside Hungary's borders, and they form some of the largest bodies of national minorities in Europe. And I think it is proper to remind to the Helsinki Accord here and now, not only because it is the 50th anniversary, but also because in Finland we can observe some examples of how to resolve outstandingly the situation of national minorities. I'm pointing to the autonomy of the Åland Islands. But as I heard from Taina's lecture that there is a way to go for in the perspective of the Sami people, but still there are good steps toward it. So in the Helsinki Final Act, in section 7, it says, the participating states on whose territory national minorities exist will respect the right of persons belonging to such minorities to equality before the law, will afford them the full opportunity for actual enjoyment of human rights and fundamental freedoms, and will in this manner protect their legitimate interests in this sphere. And furthermore, the participating states, recognizing the contribution that national minorities or regional cultures can make to cooperation among them in various fields of culture, intend, when such minorities or cultures exist within their territory, to facilitate this contribution, taking into account the legitimate interests of their members. So why am I speaking about all these things? Because there is a key element to acknowledging each other's sovereignty and accepting native national minorities as bridges. And there is a kind of reference to it in the Helsinki Final Act. It is just one sentence, let me read it out. Encouraging exchanges of teaching materials, including school textbooks, having in mind the possibility of promoting mutual knowledge and facilitating the presentation of each country in such books. Quote ends. In other words, promoting dialogue. And when building a common Europe, I think it is very important to have dialogues, not only to get to a common understanding between the West of Europe and the rest of Europe, you know, the West and the rest, but also to find out common histories or common stories or shared heritage in each other's history. And I can tell you that this is what my institute is embarked upon with our regional partners from Romania, Slovakia, Slovenia, Czechia, and Poland. Because we find very much alike, many things very much alike in patterns of the Sovietization. For example, the persecution of churches. For example, the forced collectivization, I mean, of individual farmers, and so on. Or the working methods of the communist state security apparatus, and so on. So we can find, so it is our examples that prove that we can find common stories and common heritage in our past. But getting back to the text of the Helsinki Final Act, it says, including school textbooks and mutual knowledge. Yes, but what kind of teaching materials, what kind of mutual knowledge, and what kind of textbooks? I would like to present you a short quote from Tsvetan Todorov, a Bulgarian emigre in France, who wrote the followings. Totalitarian regimes of the 20th century have revealed the existence of a danger never before imagined, the blotting out of memory. These 20th century tyrannies have understood the conquest of men and territories could be accomplished through information and communication, and created a systematic and complete takeover of memory, hoping to control it even in its most hidden recesses. Quote ends. For being able to continue an honest and fair dialogue, we need a just effort to explore our history, our past, and to get back what had been taken from us. A famous, once famous Hungarian historian, but her legacy is still living, Mária Ormos, who, by the way, had been previously in the highest echelon of the Communist Party, told in an interview in 2005, in Hungary, at least 1.5 generations have been robbed of their history because they have been presented with a single non-existent history, while the real history that determined their destiny has never been told. Anything that had to do with the truth, with reality, could not be written down, could not be said, quote end. It is not true entirely what she told about the robbing of our history, because even herself wrote down things in the 1980s that did not really fit into the very official narrative of the Communist Party, but by and large we can accept that her words are true. And why I am insisting on the question of memory. I think there are three things that can bind together any human groups. First, values, I mean shared values. We look on the world similarly or very similarly. The second, interests. We have common interests. And the third is experience. But what is experience? It sounds very abstracted. Because, for example, no one can say that I have a personal experience from the First World War. Well, there might be some very, very old persons, but I'm afraid their memories from the First World War can be as a child, not as a participator. But still, the First World War, for example, is very important, even, for example, for Finland, because Finland gained its independence during the events of the First World War from the Russian Imperium. So this is our story still, for example, the First World War, but there are some other examples, of course, which are not personally, but as a group belongs to us as a common and shared memory. So hereby I am closing my remarks by saying that Truth and Reconciliation Process, which is the title of this panel, in my point of view, starts with the exploration of history and by building back a memory or even memories that had been taken of us. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. As you mentioned, education is extremely important in this process of reconciliation. And in the German-Polish example, I know it is a project to have a common history textbook. It is a project. I don't know if it is successful. But it is one project is successful. In other difficult, very difficult reconciliation process between France and Germany. So they have a common history manual. So we will come back to you and to if you have a short remark, but we can discuss after the presentation. Katalin, please, you are the last as you desire.
So, it is an honor to be here. Yeah, I'm such a midget. Yeah. So, Helsinki Spirit, it was about achieving the lasting peace in a bipolar world. Now, where we are here today. We have still war next to Finland, and we are living in increasingly polarizing societies. Multiple crises. So I believe that in order to defend not only peace, but also give a hope for democracy, it is absolutely imperative that we come up with a kind of durable reconciliation pattern. Because how I can see it, and I'm sorry for being a gloomy academic, but reconciliation process is dependent on basically two conditions. One, that reconciliation process is not a rational process. Second, it has been too long a kind of top-down decision of political leaders, which is why it has been always one way or the other a temporal success. So what I will start with here to discuss these two challenges on a successful reconciliation. Well, I'm a historian, so I don't know what is truth, because from a historian point of view, truth depends where you sit, how you define and interpret what is a trauma, a historical trauma, what is truth from your nation's perspective. So first, I will argue that reconciliation in its core, not really a rational process, because reconciliation is an attempt to resolve a conflict in the past that is deeply ingrained in identity. So it is about how people was experiencing these historical events, how people understand some periods in the past as profound injustice. Do they really experience, or somebody is telling them that a trauma is worthwhile to maintain? In many cases, as it has been said previously, that this experience is not a personal, not necessarily a personal one, but a transgenerational pain about the past. So people who are subject to reconciliation did not suffer necessarily the moment that has to be reconciled. So it is a memory of their extended family, of their local or ethnic or national communities that is keeping this trauma alive, because they are feeling belonging to these communities that keeps certain traumas alive. So historical traumas do unite nationally, regionally, even transnationally. Regionally, the communist experience of the 40 years in Eastern Europe has been a very shared kind of suffering period that has, my colleague here said that it is time outside of history. What an interesting notion. But then we have had, for example, traumas that divide neighbors. As also have said, the First World War peace agreements of what we call in Central Europe the Trianon trauma, that the Hungarians address as profound injustice, whereas the Romanians, for example, think that finally justice happened, right? So which one to go? Or, of course, transnationally, we have had this kind of great breakthroughs, like the memory of Holocaust, or the memory of the suffering the communist regimes. These are celebrated in the EU in certain days. So traumas are critical junctures that transformed, once upon a time, communities, and traumas that is inherited by the forthcoming generations. Traumas became the central parts of national commemorations. You can have the circle of national days, yearly circle of national days, or you can have a history book written by a certain period of time, taught the new generation what to remember and how to remember it. And then we have public discourses popping up every now and then, and this infinite warehouse of political use as traumas are. And this is exactly the problem and the next challenge, that reconciliation is basically a political process that is time-bound and it is depending on the political agency. So which party benefits from resolving a historical rooted juxtaposition and which party wants to maintain them as a conflict for political purposes? So, historically rooted memory of injustice is always, or perhaps, hopefully, is dormant, unless a political party, a political actor gets them reactivated. And then it becomes, once again, a painful memory that needs to be reconciled. Right? So, but I would like to end this gloomy presentation with hope. Because yes, I believe that there are solutions how to manage or how to get through a very successful reconciliation, as for example in the Sami case. Because I think this is about not top-down political leadership, but more about bottom-up processes where we do have to engage people to understand that a trauma is a construction that they are thought to have to remember in every now and then regarding the political regime or political party in power. So it is a construction. But nevertheless, I believe that we have to make this kind of reconciliation process as approachable to people, to just normal people, not academics, not politicians, not even the media, but just normal, common people, to listen how they understand certain kind of difficult past that they were told or they experienced or their father and grandfather and so on experienced and passed on this painful memory. So I believe that listening to people's experiences and also having them to meet the other side of the conflict, similar type of normal people's experiences, and have a discussion and a dialogue with them. This can be actually a healing process, because truth is not something that is in concrete. The truth is how you experience the truth and injustice or justice. So I would argue that we need to engage people and arrange encounters with the other side or all other conflicting sides. And on the other hand, the other possible solution for lasting reconciliation is taking it up to the international level, taking it up to engage international attention and having a wider discussion, for example, in Europe, what constitutes actually a conflict that needs to be reconciled. And once upon a time, and this is my last word, remember that all those reconciliation processes that we have, successful enough, they are temporal. They depend on us always. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I think you are right. In daily life, people can live together as neighbors and good friends, and until politics intervene and changed everything. European history is an example in this regard. You you had a remark about the question with the textbook.
Yes, we have a common Polish-German textbook, and it was the last. I think that the last part was accepted and approved to use in schools last year. It was the last part because it has some parts, and we have it. Yes. I'm wondering if it will be in use for real. It will. We will check in a few years. So we will see on both sides of the. I have this kind of reflection that even more in Poland we know the history and we know more. Poles knows more about Germans than Germans about Poles. And for example, the research is made by Kreisau Stiftung. Show that this kind of not balanced knowledge on the both sides of our border, and I think that it is also a kind of problem for our relation for the future, that we don't have this balance of the, let's say, perception of the partner.
Yeah, I know it's a committee of historians who are dealing with this problem of textbook, common acceptable for the both parties. And in Romania, we say when you want to abandon a problem, you enforce a committee to deal with it.
These committees work a long time, and of course we have this textbook, but there is also a critics of the textbook from both sides, I think. So it shows that the work is very hard.
It is, but this is the hard way. And I am coming back to Taina, speaking about the Sami people. Can you tell us more about what happened with the Sami people in Finland or in the other countries where they live? What kind of discrimination they suffered? What's about?
Yes, that's a huge question, but to put it in a short way, it's a colonial history we have in Sapmi, in Sweden, Finland, Norway, and northern part of Russia. And most of the people, they don't know that we have that type of history. Sami people were not able to use their own language. They had to hide their own culture. And in Sweden and Norway, it was really a real political decision. In Finland, our government didn't make any political decision, but that happened. Sami children, they were gathered to boarding schools. And that is the history, like my father. He felt shame to be a Sami, and that's why he moved away from Sapmi to Helsinki and started to study as a policeman. He made a very beautiful career as a chief policeman in Helsinki. And now he feels very happy and lucky to see how his children and grandchildren are working for the Sami culture. My sister is an artist. Our children are Sami activists and artists too. So I feel very good that my father, at the age of 84, has been able to see that type of future, empowering, better future. And now we have schools for Sami children, we have kindergartens for Sami children, and it's getting better. But still, there's not a lot to do. At the moment, you may know that Finnish Parliament is really almost ready to make the decision that they accept Sami Parliament Act. We have been waiting for this decision for 13 years. 13 years. It's a question of self-governance of Sami people. And I'm really looking forward next week that our parliament in Finland will make the final decision for our rights, for our future, better future.
Thank you. I'm going to open our session for questions. If you have questions, please prepare and announce yourself. If you have something to ask our panelists. Till then, I will ask Aaron. You mentioned you study how the mechanism of Communist Party work in controlling society. What's the experience of Hungary in this matter and your institution? It is similar what happened in Romania, what happened in the other Central Eastern European countries under the Soviet and then communism regime? Speaking about Securitate in Romania and other institutions, similar institutions in different countries.
Yes, the answer is yes and no, because there were very huge differences between each countries in the communist bloc, but still there is a date, a year that combine together our experiences in Romania and Hungary, and this is the 1956. Because before that year, I can risk that it was by and large very much the same. I mean, the ruthless methods, the very open dictatorship, and so on, and the brutality, and the open stupidity of the regime. But after the 1956 events, in Hungary, it was a revolution and then a kind of retaliation. In Romania, there was retaliation without revolutions. Okay, there were movements in Bucharest, in Cluj-Kolozsvár, yes, the students, and so on, but still there were no such thing as a national revolution. And in Romania, but you will correct me, or Florin Abraham is here, he may correct me as well. So in Romania, it went along that way, even to deeper recesses concerning the Ceausescu dictatorship. In Hungary, they chose another way after closing the retribution and the retaliation. It was much like a kind of pyramid scheme. So you can take part in the dictatorship to upper, and you get back some rewards for that. But it was a very shrewd and very hidden in many cases. But openly you couldn't challenge the ruling role of the Communist Party, the Soviet alliance. I mean, it was not an alliance, but the relation of a minor, the satellite, and the master. So there were taboos, but still there were differences in that way. On the other hand, following the 1956 revolution in Hungary, the Romanian colleagues helped to reorganize the Hungarian internal security. They provided hundreds of Hungarian-speaking Securitate officers for rebuilding the counter-espionage, but the anti-reactionary part of the Hungarian state security.
Yeah, and yes, and Romania had a role in this repression against the leader of Hungarian uprising. Speaking about repression, we have this experiment, Pitești experiment, you have presented earlier in a panel. And as far as I know, just an example, in a small county in Romania, the Securitate had 2,000 informers. In a small country, 2,000 informers. Even in the primary school, they had informers in primary school for the kids in the 10 years, 12 years, 14 years old to survey their behavior. So this is a reality. Speaking about trauma and transgenerational trauma, we experience in the former communist state the same repression. But now, if you look what is happening in our society, for many of our citizens, communist times is presented as a glorious epoch, as the heaven on earth. And a lot of people believe that. Of course, a lot of people believe earth is flat, of course. But it's unbelievable how this kind of disinformation is working in our society. And what is criminal and what is bad for the society is transformed in something glorious and something of proud and something to be happy with and regretted. It's very difficult to understand this kind of thoughts, not only for the youngest generation, but also for the people who experienced the hunger, fear, terror in their own life, and then in their old time, they have a different perception. It's very difficult to understand, and to make a reconciliation with your own past. This is very complicated, and I'm asking you if you have the same processes. Of course, except in Finland. Finland wasn't a communist state, happily that, but trauma exists also in this minority problems. Please, anyone who can
I think that the problem what you expressed has, of course, we observe it, I think, in all our countries in Central Eastern Europe after collapse of communist system, this kind of sentiment to the communist times in part of society. And I think that, of course, we have different reasons, but very important reason is that we didn't achieve a success in transitional justice. So communist crimes were not condemned properly, I think, on the international level. So even if Nuremberg trial was about, let's say, not a lot of perpetrators, some, let's say, figures, it caused that everybody, it was very important, let's say, sign for everybody that symbol and, you know, very, very important fact that Nazi German regime was totalitarian, was bad, and it was condemned. We didn't have similar thing according to communist times. We had some, so this is, I think that this is one reason why it is so. And I think according to traumas and this transgeneration traumas, I think that, of course, this is a complicated process on many different levels. I think that the only possible answer for trauma is to commemorate what you lost. So victims, and only commemoration can give the chance for reconciliation with the past. Without it, it is probably impossible.
Yes, please, you have a...
Just a comment about this coming to terms with the communist past. Actually, this did happen in Czechoslovakia after the collapse of communism, because they had a different kind of policy. But Hungary and Poland, it was trouble, because in both countries there were a kind of liberal communist regimes started to appear already in the late 60s, early 70s in Poland, and in Hungary in the 70s and 80s. So the question was, there was no revolution like in Romania, but the communists just laid down power, and they started to negotiate in round tables. So it was a kind of reconciliation process already. But the problem was in these two countries that who would you purge? Who are the guilty of the regime? The ultimate, elite, or also the supporters, or all those who actually one way or the other benefited from a kind of welfare socialism in both countries. So this was the problem why Hungary and Poland did not go to this this discussion of who are guilty of the past. Romania, on the other hand, did not go because the ex-communist party just transformed itself as a social democrat and kept the power until 1997. So there was no this kind of time when you have a possibility to come to terms and have a societal discussion. In addition, I think that the problem is that is why, because there was no this kind of discussion like in Czechoslovakia in the early 1990s, that is why this communist discourse is coming back today. Ex-communists who are, guilty of the past, why are they in our midst? So this is a question that when you don't have this societal discourse about the past, then it tends to come back because the politicians are using it, because it is a very practical, manipulative tools to get elected. This is easy.
I would not agree with this thesis that Czechoslovakia had, former Czech Republic, for example, had a success with this transitional justice, as well as in Poland. There were, I think, few examples of sentences of high rank officials. I don't know, even in Czech Republic, for example, last two years ago, Vratislav Vajnar, so Interior Ministry, was delivered to court 2 years ago in the age of 92, and he died during the trial. So in Poland, Czesław Kiszczak, for example, after very, very, very long process, trial was sentenced, and he never went to jail. So we didn't have this kind of general trial over the communist regime itself, or the most important crimes committed by them. And of course, the kind of round table, this was the model, for example, in Poland to initiate the transformation. And it had some advantages because it was without blood, like in Romania. But it was noticed by this very important part of society as a kind of not a very fair deal of elites of communist regime and some part of elites of opposition. And it was also the problem for next years to it was not clearly told who was good and who was bad during the communist times. So, of course, we have these problems. So it was my answer, my theory, why still we have this kind of, so in our societies there is still a sentiment to the communist times, because it was not condemned. So in our social life, there is a possibility to have this kind of attitude to these times.
Thank you. It is also about the moral ambiguity, I presume. Taina, you have a remark?
Yeah, I was thinking when we are talking about dramas, and it's very easy to think how things were in the past. But I think that we also have to think what's happening today. We still have colonial structures in Europe, in Finland, and we still have new dramas. For example, green transition. For sure, it's a positive thing. We have to fight against climate change. But for Sami people, our life is based on the land and land use rights. So we have faced really big difficulties because of green transition. Mainly in Swedish and Norwegian side of Sápmi, not yet in Finland. We don't have mines or wind power plants in Finnish side of Sápmi, but you probably know the news, what's happening in Norway and Sweden. In Sami areas, huge wind power plants are built there in Sami land. And that's why somehow green transition has become a real threat for Sami traditional livelihoods. I'm talking about reindeer herding, fishing, and those traditional livelihoods for our culture, for our life, and for our future. So we still have new traumas we are carrying. It's not just the question of the past.
Any questions?
I just would like to add something to the previous issue. So I think it is not only because we lacked such Nuremberg trials on national levels or whatever, but it's also because people who lived in the 1980s and in the 1970s and afterwards in the 1990s, so in these, for example, in these 3 decades, they use comparing, because they compare that before the 1970s, for example, in Hungary, they don't really have very, very good memories. It's partly colorful, partly shadowy. But after the fall of communism, after the transition, for a decade in Hungary, it was like tohu vabohu, you know, the ancient chaos. And many people lost their jobs. 1.5 million jobs ceased to exist. And people compare. Before that, okay, there was a huge scale of alcoholism, abortions, whatever, and psychiatric problems. But still, we could manage somehow. Hungarian forints was a valid means of tender. For example, if you went to Bulgaria or to Romania, it was a worthy currency. But afterwards, it just collapsed. So I think that's also a motive beyond these phenomena.
And then they were young.
Yes, of course.
Yes.
Everything was good.
Always it's better to be young and healthy and rich than poor, old and sick. So yeah, I can understand this. A last question if you have. If, please, we have just a minute, so be short.
It's about Hungary, this very recent authoritarian tendencies in Russian, Hungarian inner politics. So are they somehow related to perhaps not so successful reconciliation of the historical memory?
I think we have different opinions here, so I will let the floor.
Always.
I believe that the problem here is that in Eastern Europe, the East Central Europeans, they are not consensus societies. So it is easy to have a kind of polarized society because it is always easier to control it. But I don't think, I agree with him in a sense that what we have today is a kind of dissatisfaction with I don't know, a welfare state, dissatisfaction that the social structure of the society, dissatisfaction with security, because certain politicians take advantage of insecurities, I don't know, economic or social or whatever insecurities, and it is easy to take advantage. And this is, in this sense, reminds us in different time periods before the collapse. But I would not say that it is because there was no social or wide discussion about how do we understand the past. It is not perhaps that, but it is more about long time dissatisfaction with what they were called liberal democracy, what they were called a kind of economic driven democracy, because there are a lot of people were dissatisfied with that. But it is not about reconciliation with the past. It is perhaps more about reconciliation with the present.
Thank you very much.
May I have just one remark?
Yes, please.
There are different opinions on this question. So, for example, for me, there is no authoritarian tendencies in Hungary. And in some other countries, for example, in France, Italy, they think a great part of the voters that they have some authoritarian tendencies, but this is not my part to debate. So I think there are different opinions on this question in this room.
Thank you very much. We are out of time, and I have a secret. For a successful reconciliation process, all you have to do is to invite people to lunch. And everybody will be happy with this. And before, I will ask you to give a round of applause to our panelists and distinguished guests.